Oh, hello. Hey everybody, I was getting some work done on my gardens out here at the farm, and you know, you start to get that feeling, and when it gets to a certain time of the day or a certain time of the year where it's like you're really pretty much tired, you're feeling like, no, there's nothing really going on out there. But as I came out here to look around today, and recognize, really seeing the permaculture style of gardening really very effective. And after everything we've been through, and I'm gonna, on my live that I do on Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m., I do it over on my business page. I do that every Sunday morning. I'm actually gonna go into my backyard gardens that I've kind of put to sleep, and show folks kind of, what happens when a garden, really goes to sleep. I haven't really put this garden to sleep necessarily. In fact, it's now in what I would call its okra crop season, sunflower season, melon season. So I wanted to go and show you guys around here today because it's looking really good. And for those of you that have followed along with the way I grow, or if you'd like to go back and check out some of my YouTube videos or anything like that, you'll see that I'm really adamant about raising the soil up, helping to regenerate the soil, adding a lot of organic material to the soil. And because of that, we've been through this year, because we've been through the crazy freeze, because we've been through the floods, and now our temperature is super spiked, and we have like high humidity going on out here. It's just given us the opportunity to take a look at what can happen to a garden, and what can a garden look like when you really give it the techniques, the permaculture techniques, and the techniques that are really geared towards a permanent garden that is constantly growing life and constantly regenerating itself. So I'm just going to take you and show you around real quick. As you can see behind me, I'm literally sitting in a patch of okra, so I could get a little bit of shade, so I could actually see the screen, because that's one thing that's really, just in the sunlight and everything, it's really hard to see the screen. But you can see this, row of okra behind me that's beginning to really start to take off. So I'm going to flip this around so I can show you guys around. This garden out here in the front is actually the front garden, and then I have another garden in the back there. I may not make it all the way back there because I don't want to be on here for too long, because I've got some other things that I want to do. But the other thing is that I'm really excited at how beautiful this looks, because we've got that farm to table dinner going on out here at the farm on Tuesday. And I was kind of concerned that things were going to look a little drab or dreary, but they're actually looking really beautiful. And we're stepping into the next phase of the summer gardens, kind of finally, as we've gone through that that early summer flooding. And it'll be interesting to see how much more water we get this summer. So, all right, let me show you around real quick. Let me flip this around. Let's see. That's the button right there. Hi, Jackie. Good morning. All right, here we go. And I'm about to have this cut down. This is that, like, if you guys have been watching this garden out here in the front at the farm very much, you'll know this has been my little, like, foodscaping flower patch. Well, it's all dead now. So I actually said, I told my dad when he brings a mower around to just go ahead and mow that back. Now, granted, there is a little bit of stuff alive still in here, but it's so hot right now that the likelihood that it's going to flower really nicely is and so I really want to kind of just get it cleaned up. But look at all this seed that's here, that's available for the next season. There's lots and lots of seed in here. So all of this will reseed, and it'll create me another nice farmscaping patch of flowers. All right, here we go. Let's look around at this place. So in here is where I pretty much had my potatoes. And what you have now is buckwheat and sweet alyssum. So this is sweet alyssum, and this is buckwheat. And so what that is at this point is really pretty much like a cover crop. It's just covering things up, covering the soil up. I did pop in a few of the okra that I had started, some couple different kinds of red okras, and some of these I actually saved the seeds from last season, so you can see that there's some different varieties mixed in here very nicely. So, and then some of these sunflower stalks where I had already gone ahead and taken the sunflower off, I'm using them as a trellis for my watermelon, and my melons that are on these type of trellising are actually doing much better. So I've got one on this side, and I think that there's maybe a one on the other side over there. So that's an idea for sunflowers and even okra can be used that way too. Over here I've got, of course, all of my different types of pumpkins and winter squash still growing, and lots of beautiful purple whole peas. So those are covering the ground at this point. I am still getting a little bit off of them. I just picked these a couple days ago, so you can see I'm still harvesting some off of this, but in the meantime it's also adding nitrogen to the soil. Over here I have a massive patch of sweet potatoes that have taken off right here. So you can see that they started on this row right here and have grown out this far. Now, sweet potato vines, that's what this is, are actually edible. So any of this could be green edible that could be used right now for your green, for if you're needing to get some greens right now. Sweet potatoes are good to plant for that. And I think I planted, I don't know, like 7 slips that were traded for vegetables. Somebody had them, and so that we traded. So, and then you can see this really pretty okra here in the center. I just have to like walk on top of this stuff sometimes. Okay, but look, you see that? Isn't that pretty okra? It's red. I can't remember what the variety is. I'd have to look back at my seeds. So this is that whole garden. You can see we raised it up massively, and there was water standing. I mean, standing. Like I was having to walk in my boots that were up to my knees. So we flooded really, and held water here too. But at the same time, look how beautiful this stuff is after not having been watered at all, and as hot and humid as it's been. Here's my zinnias standing up straight and tall. Over in here, I've got different types of melons and watermelons. You can see, let's see, I've got that melon in there. It's like a silver melon. It's a little bit of a different exotic melon. It's really good. Has stayed sweet, actually. I'm also still growing quite a bit of this tromboncino squash, which can be used as a summer squash or a winter squash, like a pumpkin as well. There's another nice row of okra that's coming up, but underneath it I've got lima beans that bare minimum, they're growing me seeds for next season, because I had such a hard time growing butter beans and lima beans this year. I just don't have the timing right on those plants, I guess. But hopefully, maybe, look at this, how they're really coming up. They're liking the shade. You see that they have the shade of the okra, so they're liking that. And then I also have popped in here a lot of different kinds of basil as well. And basil's just a good healthy plant right now that flowers, draws in the bees. This is a basil as well, so there's a lot of basil. All of this is actually not weeds, some of it's weeds, but you know, like this is a basil weed basically, and basil over there too. So there's big basil in here as well, Italian leaf. You can see the zinnias that are continuing to pop up, and they're just kind of enjoying the shade a little bit, right? And of course my ground is all covered. Can you see that I don't have like a big open flat field with nothing growing on it anymore? So even as this stuff starts to die back, let's walk a little bit further down this way. You can see I've got my pumpkin squash growing, winter squash growing all over the place, kind of taking over some more of a sunflower trellising situation. Now, if you look in here, sunflowers and black-eyed peas really do attract the aphids. Sometimes I actually like to use plants to be exactly that. Draw those aphids onto one particular area, one particular plant. And then worst case scenario, if I feel like it's starting to spread, I can actually just spray it down, just this one plant. But the thing is that it's helping to keep some of the insects in one particular area and not spreading to everything. And my other black-eyed peas are on the other end of the garden, so you can kind of see a difference in how they're acting, and varieties as well. I have a little bit of a different variety, but you can see in other places where I'm still picking these peas and they're looking really good. So this integrated gardening style, and that's what you would really call this, it's an integrated gardening style. It means I'm planting lots of different varieties of things together in as efficient as I can, so that I can go through and harvest pretty efficiently as I continue to scale and be more productive, right? So here's another row of okra that I have going over here, and then you can see where squash, these winter squash, are just kind of nice runners. These are basically your pumpkins right here, and they're all different varieties of pumpkins, but that's basically what's happening there. So I've left some things just because that plant right there is a place for life to exist, and I want more than anything else out here life to exist. So the weeds, outside of just causing me a long-term problem or too much coverage or something like that. I don't worry too much about the weeds, but I also don't worry too much about older plants. As long as they're not causing a massive infestation or something else. And then like if they die, if they get rotten or anything like that, they're gonna fall off. But otherwise, the other day I harvested a cabbage from here, dumped it in a bucket. Look, see that? And a toad jumped out of the cabbage. So there's life living in there. And that's a good thing in my opinion, because the more insects I have, the more toads I have, I start to create an ecosystem out here. Life. That's what I want. That's exactly what I want. And the water has tremendously helped out with creating the life that I want out here. So you can see I still have squash setting. You know, they're not growing super fast, but they're setting. And then I've got 4 sections over here. Now these rows actually run this way. And I had a lot of standing water right here and right here, because I haven't gotten these rows really nicely mulched in between in here, because sometimes you just don't get to everything you want to get to. But because this garden is a permanent structure, a permanent garden, I'm going to be able to go in as I'm developing and putting in my fall garden stuff and fill in the spaces and put mulch between the rows. And this is all actually really nice stuff. If I went down here, I mean, this isn't like nasty clay. I made good soil here. So even though that's a walking path, I can go ahead and just get my rakes and stuff as I'm beginning to build my fall beds and just pull this stuff up on top of here. You know, get rid of this junk like this. This plant was yuck. Of course, one thing to keep in mind about vining squash, they reroot. So see how this one, its tendrils go down and reroot. So it starts over again. So that's the benefit of doing a lot of winter squash as well, because the summer squash, it just gets unhappy. So once it gets to a certain point, this one's a vining squash too. But some of these that are not vining squashes, like this is not a vining squash, it's not gonna set in again. It's like a little yellow squash, right? So if it starts to get bad here at the root, it's pretty much a goner, but the other ones can actually root themselves in other places. Look how beautiful that okra flower is. Look at the massive sunflowers. I've had so many beautiful heads of sunflowers, and I've learned a lot this year about different insects that bother sunflowers. I've never really grown what I would consider a crop of sunflowers like I did this year. So I've got lots and lots of seeds, but I'm also learning how different sunflowers are affected by the bugs. One thing I knew is that sunflowers are like cotton candy to the insects. You see? So all the different insects really, really, really like the sunflowers. So if you're trying to grow sunflowers for purposes of actual production, they're probably challenging. If you're growing them like I did as a utility plant, which basically I'm growing the seeds so I have more seeds for next season. I'm growing a place for me to trellis my melons, or anything that catches in this area over here grows up on this, and to also attract different types of insects away from other different plants. Look at that. This is, I believe this is the Jing orange. Oh, I don't have a marker to tell me. I had a seed called the Jing orange, and it's been a really nice, beautiful, look at this, look how pretty that is. Look at that plant. So like, even if you don't eat a lot of okra, the okra plant is just a really gorgeous plant for your gardens. So, and you can collect seeds. So now this is what I was telling you earlier. So as these plants start to die back over here a little bit, they're ground covering. And then other things will start to perk up. So squash that was really young and small was kind of protected by this overgrowing of black-eyed peas. When the overgrowing of black-eyed peas starts to die back, then you get the lift up of the melons and the squash and the cucumbers and all the other things that were kind of down underneath it. Look here. See, these are beautiful cucumbers still growing, still producing, still sweet, still delicious, and it was all because they were somewhat protected for a while, and then they were able to flourish. So that's a big, 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 big part of why you can literally, this is a perfect example, which is why I was so excited to show you guys this today. This is a perfect example of why permaculture and integrated gardening is an essential but easy way to get what you want from your garden. I mean, look how much squash is still here, just because of the the way this stuff has been grown. And you can see, like I said earlier, I'm protecting my soil as much as I can. So as the plants start to die back, the ones that don't do as well, they got nicked by something, you know, like we don't really know exactly what the reason is, but I'm just going to kind of leave them to cover. You might, if you've got a bare spot in your garden, you might actually give black-eyed peas a try. Just put some peas on that and just see if they'll come up. The soil temperature is the issue at this point because our soil is really hot right now. And most seeds are gonna, or won't germinate at much higher than 85 degrees. And they might even terminate. So trying to keep your soil temperature down is an extremely important part. But look, I've still got, I mean, look, there's so many plants still doing really well out here. Now, granted, it'll be interesting to see how much of this stuff actually makes it to September or October. I mean, I do want to keep my tomato plants alive that I have on the other side, my pepper plants alive that I have on the other side. The okra will stay alive regardless. But do I want to water anymore out here? You know? Do I want to just let the things go ahead and die and go to sleep out here? In my other garden, you know what, let's go ahead and walk over there. In my back garden, where the trellising is, and my tomatoes are, and my pepper plants are, and stuff like that, I do have an actual watering system over there, an irrigation system. So that's where I've planted plants I'm really much more interested in protecting. These plants are what you would, at this point, they would be dry farming. I'm not trying to germinate any more seeds. I don't want my melons to get a bunch more water. Okra's going to be fine without it, you know. So I know like what's over there is stuff that can still hang in there. Now some of those flowers that were planted in there, they might not survive after the water stops coming. That would be where you would see a lot of your loss. Also, of course, your squash. You'll start to lose your squash eventually too. Some of those pumpkin vines, I mean, this is where you want that to start happening. It's like one of my pumpkin vines, I have this huge pumpkin out there. I wish I had showed y'all. This huge pumpkin, the vine has died. But I want the pumpkin, kind of like you want your tomatoes to vine ripen, I want the pumpkin to vine ripen. So I'm letting the sun actually warm the pumpkin before I take it in a little bit more. So look here, I have a pumpkin hanging right there. I grew a lot of these guys. They did really well this year. So I'm going to have lots of pumpkins for our October farm to table dinner. So this one I have an irrigation system on. There was a lot of water here. This is where the most of the standing water that just stood and stood and stood for a long time was. Down this row and then down this row here. So this is where I began to understand, look at my monarchs. I have had a lot of monarchs, baby, like new, just came out of their cocoon monarchs. I've seen a lot of those recently. It's lots of fun this time of year. Okay, so when I'm talking about moving water and putting berms and swales in, that's some of the permaculture style of moving your water, but holding your water in your certain places, getting an idea and getting an understanding of where the water went this season so that I know how to use it, know how to plant in different ways. I'm able to understand how to maybe put berms or do something a little bit different to keep it from standing back here. So maybe I need to put some sort of a massive berm that lets it stand here. I don't know, you know, so there's some things I need to think about with that. So lots of water stood here, massive water stood here for a long time, but I still have this really nice tromboncino plant growing up the fence here. You can see it's actually dropping quite a few fruits. And check this pop out over here. Well, bam, he's a biggin. Goes all the way up. He got a big belly, that one does. I've never seen one with a bell that big, so I'm excited about it. I've actually left it on to let it go yellow so we can have that one as a pumpkin, but you can actually harvest these tromboncinos green. I'm telling you guys, if you're not growing tromboncino yet, you should be, because it is the new summer squash of deliciousness. You can harvest it green like this or like this, and it's just got such great flavor. It's so good. Okay, all right, what else did I want to show you? I wanted to show you how my peppers and tomatoes are doing on this line back here. You can see, and you can see some pumpkins that kind of went in right there at the end. Like I would have never planted them if we weren't about to get so much rain, but I went ahead and planted them and they lived because they're lifted up, they're raised up just enough to be, and they actually survived. So I need to get that one up on the trellis. It's going to do great. That's going to be a really successful plant. But you can see my tomatoes are still they're just here. They're hanging out. So as they get a chance to really start to take out, if I start to have really some big issues with water, look how hard this ground is here. So this is, I still need to get some more organic matter on this clay over here on this side. You can see even that this is why I weed right after the rains, because look how hard it is. I mean, normally I can just pull this stuff out super easily. There's no passive least resistance right now. So, but anyways, this will stay irrigated if I need to irrigate it, so that I can keep my peppers and tomato plants alive. Now my cucumbers, they're probably gonna start to die off. I'm gonna have to start cutting out some of the zinnia that's in bad shape, and getting it back in its rows and getting it back in line. So now's the time where the harvest starts to slow outside of okra and melons, but the cleanup starts to occur so that I can get ready for my fall gardens. So I've got a nice tomato plant right here. Of course, it got hit by the hornworms, no big deal. Pulled those little puppies off, but the plant is still doing good and it will produce eventually. And then on this line over here, I have same thing. More tomatoes on this line. I'm just watching out for them, keeping the worms off of eating them and stripping them too much. If we need to get water in here, we'll get water in here eventually, but I'm hoping that maybe there's enough groundwater in that we won't have that problem. You see, I use the trellises for these watermelons here too. So see, I'm gonna be able to get some later watermelons. Tomato plants that are still standing. Now you can see where things are getting weedy, right? Because I mean, there was so much standing water in here, but at the same time, you can see that I don't have a lot of bare ground, and that bare ground gets really hard. So even as I get over here next to some ground that's got some more green on it over here, you can see how much easier it is to lift stuff out of the ground here. So there's a lot more path of least resistance on these inside rows that had a lot of water in them. So they're still, so I want to keep that stuff moist. That's why I leave that stuff in there and don't panic too much about the weeds, you know, unless they just start to get really obnoxious and I can't get down the row, but then I can clean it up. Now the cucumbers, it's time for me to seriously start tasting them because the heat that they're coming, but I've been pulling them really small. And there's been a couple of varieties that stay really, really good. So like this cucumber, this is gonna go to my chickens or my pigs because it's just not gonna be good. It's a homemade pickled cucumber. It should be a lot smaller than this, and it's probably gonna be really bitter. So that one's not good anymore. But some of the other varieties, I think I might have lost my Armenian. It was here and then it got sick. Anyways, that was a good one for saving the cucumbers for late season. These divas has done well and stayed tasty, but the ones that I think are really, really, really tasty is that, and I had one up in the front, that punakira and this salt and pepper, and they stay really sweet, even throughout the whole, like as the heat sets. So that's been really nice. So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on them because we're pretty much past cucumber season is what that means. So here's this garden that I was telling you about where I actually have an irrigation system. So this is where anything that I like seriously need protected through the summer. So that would be like, you know, nice big herb plants, peppers, tomatoes, things like that is why the main reason why I would put this. Of course, cucumbers and things like that get to go on the trellis, and I may leave one line. You can see I've got peppers on this row. I may leave, it's kind of, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do the fall planting yet, but I can't put my cucumbers and tomatoes on the same rows. So I may decide to just do one less cucumber row with more tomatoes for the fall. But it's all a gamble, especially with the freeze, the way we dealt with that freeze this last year. So I'm still setting fruit, but this heat is gonna make it it's probably gonna be a no mas on that. Although the melons and stuff like that seem to still be setting pretty good. So, all right, you guys, I have got so much work to do, and it's definitely not getting cooler. Come look over here at my Anaheim pepper. I'm so proud of it. I bought this baby start from Leo Ruiz, the Anaheim, and both of my Anaheim plants have done really, really well. These are the ones that you can make the stuffed like the chile relleno with. So I'm hoping that maybe I can get Joe to make me some chili rellenos. Alrighty, y'all. See you soon. Love you. Bye.